Want to share with you a quick vart on the Haggadah from the Netziv Haggadah, fascinating Haggadah. So he talks about the parsha Vehi Sheomda. So we say Vehi Sheomda, that it has stood for us. So what does Vehi refer to? It doesn't refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem is never referred to as Vehi. So it has stood for us in every generation, that they've all, in every generation, they're all Aleinu Chavaseinu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Matzilenu Miyadam. So the Netziv quotes that many Mefarshim who learn the Pshat is it's going back on the part right before it. We said, Baruch Shomer Havtacha Yisrael Baruch Hu. Blessed is Hashem who keeps his Havtacha to Klal Yisrael, Yuschish Saketz Vasos K'moshe Amar Avinu B'Bris Bein HaBesarim. That Hashem promised us Kigegi Yazarecha Be'eretz Lolahem, that will be slaves, that will be sojourners in a foreign land, and they'll afflict them for 400 years, and then Hashem says, the nation that afflicted you I will judge, and you'll go out with great wealth. So the way the Rashbatz, one of the Rishonim, understands the flow of the Haggadah is that this Havtacha, that the nation that afflicted you I'll judge and then I'll send you out with great wealth, was a Havtacha not just in the times of Mitzrayim, but it was a Havtacha for future Golus we would go through as well. It included the other 4 kingdoms that would afflict us. And Hashem was giving Avram Avinu a promise that Hashem would sustain us and Hashem would protect us and Hashem would take vengeance on nations that afflict us. And that's the Pshat, Vehi Sheomda L'avoseinu V'lanu, that Hashem has stood for us, that in every generation they try to afflict us, and Hashem, that Havtacha that Hashem gave Avram Avinu, that is something when HaKadosh Baruch Hu has stood for us in every generation when Hashem is Matzilenu Miyadam. Netziv has a different understanding of the flow here. He understands the Vehi Sheomda, that the part that stood for us is Kigir Yezarecha Be'eretz Olam, that you'll be sojourners in a foreign land. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu has always wanted that we should be separate from the nations that we dwell in, as the Pasuk, as we say later in the Haggadah, that we didn't come down to Mitzrayim to stay there. We made it sure that we weren't going to be part of the Mitzri culture as much as possible. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted that should be a Havtacha, that we should be separate from the Goyim. And it says, in fact, that it says in the Medrash that when Yosef Avinu died, they stopped doing Bris Milah, and that was when the hearts of the Mitzrayim switched and started to hate the Jews. And that's what we have in every generation. As they say, when the Jew doesn't make Kiddush, the Goy starts making Havdalah. When we start mixing with the Goyim, they start wanting to wipe us out. Gemara in Pesach Kufyot Chesed Beis says, Bizer Amim Karvos Yachbotzu. This scattering among the nations, what causes it? The Karvos Yachbotzu, that they wanted to come close to the Goyim. Because they wanted to become closer, to be more like the nations that we were part of, Hashem scatters us to somewhere else. And that's the word in the Haggadah. The Vehi, this Kigir Yazarecha, has been Amda L'avoseinu V'lanu. Because in every generation, in every generation, when we try to be part of that culture comes to hate us and kick us out. And that's all part of Hashem's Hashgacha, to keep us where we're supposed to be, to keep us Kadosh, to keep us separate. And continues that's the Tzei from Lavan Harami, that Lavan was Bikesh L'Akor Sakol. He didn't just want to destroy Yaakov Avinu, he wanted to destroy everything. He wanted to destroy the monotheism he represented, the Midos he represented. He wanted to destroy what a Yid is. And he brings a raya from the Pasuk. Yesh Lakel Asos Imachem Ra. He says, do I have the ability to do to you in a plural language, that he wanted to harm more than just Imcha, that he wanted to harm more than just Yaakov the man. He wanted to destroy a lot more than that. And he wanted to destroy everyone who was with Yaakov, that whole dynasty. And we learn from it, says the Netziv, that B'chol Dor V'Dor, that's what we have. That we have the threat of annihilation, we have the nations around us that try to destroy us. And so according to the Netziv, it's not just the ending that the Havtacha that Hashem will save us, that's been Amad Aleinu, but it's also the fact that Hashem puts us in the Galus, into that danger zone in the first place, over and over again, as part of Hashem's way of keeping us separate and kadosh and different from the people around us. And it's a fascinating perspective, because normally we have all the tragedies of Jewish history, we have national tragedies, and they're very difficult for us to wrap our head around. And apparently, the same way that we went through a national tragedies in Mitzrayim, and in fact, the whole Haggadah is about appreciating how Hashem brought us down there to bring us out, and make us into a great people and a great nation, that apparently there's similar hashkacha pratis. There's very much Hashem's hand involved in all the national tragedies we go through in every generation. That's part of, I guess, the main message we're trying to learn from the Haggadah, right? Is that nothing is just happening by chance. Everything is very much b'hashkacha. Everything is Hashem's choice of exactly what should happen with an exact reason. And he's learning that the Vehi Sheomda, that the B'chol Dar V'Dar Amda Malenu Chavosenu has this positive aspect to it in and of itself. Obviously, every death of any Jewish person is a tragedy, but at the same time, there's this national protection that's taking place through the suffering is what's making us to get to where we're supposed to get to. The famous Chazal, Yuna Falti Kamti Keshe B'Choshech Hashem Yorli. Chazal say if I hadn't fallen, I wouldn't be able to get up. If I hadn't been in the darkness, I wouldn't be in the light. That there's this idea that through the tragedies that we can experience, they're what elevates us, they're what brings us to a better place than we would have been before that. That seems to be the main understanding I have of why we were sent to Mitzrayim, is because it brought us to a position we wouldn't have been able to be in before we went down to Mitzrayim. We never would have been able to reach the madrigas that we reached and the kedusha that we reached. And it seems that he's learning that that's the Vehi Sheomda, that B'chol Dar V'Dar, Hashem makes it that they're Omdim Aleinu V'Chavosenu, and then he's Matzeinu Miyadam, and it's not just the Matzeinu Miyadam, which is Havtacha and Bracha, but even the B'chol Dar V'Dar Omdim Aleinu V'Chavosenu. Very different perspective, very important perspective, if we can wrap our heads around it and work with it. And Mirz Hashem, we should learn to appreciate Hashem's chesed and appreciate the kindness that He showed us through all the generations, and Hashkach He showed us through all the generations, and have a meaningful Chag Pesach. Have a Chag Kasher Sameach.